Good evening, I'm Ces Orenia Drilon.
And I'm
And after Congressman Bong Suntay, another lawmaker is drawing flack for a comment directed at a woman that many feel was just downright inappropriate.
Yung Ukraine-Russia, Mr. Chair, umabot tayo ng mga 90 kasi. Pero ito'y mas masama kasi dito Middle East ang pinag-usapan.
Okay.
Kung one-time bagsakan, pwede yung umabot above 80 po.
Mga kababayan, hindi natin alam kung kailan matatapos ang kaguluhan sa gitnang silangan. Biktima tayo ng isang giyera na hindi natin pinili o ninanais. Hindi natin kontrolado ang digmaan, pero kontrolado natin kung paano natin poprotektahan ang Pilipino.
Only a week into the Middle East conflict, disruptions in the global fuel supply chains have sent regional benchmarks soaring.
Next week, Filipinos will start feeling the effect on local fuel prices with projected increases at double digits.
These oil price hikes are expected to send industries and vulnerable sectors reeling for months to come. Mobile journalist Merimon Reyes with tonight's big story.
Filipinos are facing one of the largest weekly increases of fuel prices on record. Diesel prices may rise by as much as 16 pesos per liter, gasoline by 7 pesos. And these are just for next week, and only a few days of the Middle East tensions factored in. This projection was based on the latest 3-day trading data from the Mint of Platts Singapore. The MOPS is the primary pricing benchmark for refined petroleum in Southeast Asia. Local industry sources, however, paint an even bleaker picture. They project a 20 peso increase for diesel and 10 pesos for gasoline based on MOPS trading forecasts. In a Senate hearing today, the Oil Industry Management Bureau of the Energy Department confirmed the double-digit price hike next week. That's if oil firms do not temper the expected increase with staggered adjustments.
Yung Ukraine-Russia, Mr. Chair, umabot tayo ng mga 90 kasi. So, yun, ayoko mag-project, pero ito'y mas masama pa dun eh. Kasi dito, Middle East ang pinag-usapan. Okay. Kung mag-implement ng staggered, hindi masyado abot kaagad. Pero kung one-time bagsakan, pwede yung umabot na po.
Ng 90 pesos per liter.
But to be safe, mga above 80 po.
While the DOE has urged fuel retailers to consider staggering the price adjustments, the industry remains divided. At least one major retailer favored a one-time big-time implementation over staggered pricing. But more than pricing, senators also expressed concern over the country's fuel supply. Senator Tulfo asked Abad about the possibility of fuel rationing if current tensions in the Middle East extend.
Pag naubos po yung 50 days, yung gera tumuloy-tuloy po, sumobra na ng 50 days, ano pong opsyon natin? Magrarasyon na ho ba tayo?
Palagi ho talagang option na po yan. Nakalatag na ho yan sa contingency plan. Bumibili pa ho tayo. So, meron hong mga... Lahat ngayon ng oil companies nagtitender ho ng option. So, we're looking at by next week, malalaman ho.
Last night on The Big Story, Director Abad said that the national fuel buffer stock remains stable, with current inventories holding at roughly 30 days of supply, well above the 15-day regulatory minimum. The DOE has also advised importers to seek alternative crude sources from the US, Canada, and South America. Currently, the Department of Foreign Affairs says the US-Israel-Iran war is projected to drag on for at least a month or two.
Based on the reports from the various posts, we were informed that the US is trying to send more rockets to Iran. And then the president is also trying to have a say on who will be the next leader of Iran. So the projection from the reports that we receive, it will take 4 weeks to 8 weeks.
Kapatid mobile journalist Merimon Reyes, we are One News.
The government has begun bringing home Filipinos from the conflict-torn Middle East. Department of Migrant Workers Secretary Hans Leo Kakdak says they're prioritizing 5 countries severely hit by the conflict. He assures systems are in place for the repatriation. There are nearly 2.5 million Filipinos in the Middle East, with more than 1,000 of them requesting assistance to come home.
We have identified designated meeting points, exit points, temporary relocation points. Exit points, because the airports are closed, will be by land. So we have identified every land border crossing per 5 countries. And we have prepared the logistical aspects of repatriation. Ang number 1 payo po ng ating Pangulo, ensure, number 1, coordination with the host countries, and number 2, the safety in the repatriation process.
Meanwhile, Kakdak admits they will need more funding for repatriation efforts should the conflict last longer than expected. The DMW has a working budget of 1.5 billion pesos, which can only accommodate 10,000 Filipinos.
In related news, industry groups have expressed their apprehension to proposals of compressing the work week to just 4 days. Senator Win Gatchalian earlier suggested the option as an effort to conserve energy amid risks to oil supply and rising costs from the Middle East conflict. The palace said it is studying the proposal. The Federation of Philippine Industries, however, warned that a 4-day work week could lead to operational disruptions, including in the BPO, manufacturing, logistics, and export sectors. Donald Lim, president of the Management Association of the Philippines, suggested that energy efficiency improvements might be a more sustainable response to the crisis. Experts have also emphasized the role of remote and hybrid work, digitalization, and energy-saving technologies in cushioning businesses from external shocks. For its part, the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, or PCCI, said the government should consult stakeholders before implementing a 4-day workweek program.
Let's talk about these developments further with economist Jonathan Ravelas. Jonathan is a senior advisor at Reyes, Tacondong and Company. Good evening once again. Welcome to The Big Story.
Good evening, ladies.
All right, what is your projection of fuel prices? Or your guess is as good as, I guess, other experts around the globe?
Well, I think I'd probably look at it from a scenario. So I think right now, I believe that I'm still on the option of my scenario 1, which is around 50%, that this could be a contained flare-up. So this could be between 2 to 6 weeks. So probably at best, we could be hitting just $90 per barrel. So again, the impact to us is definitely going to be the oil freight spike. And then, of course, the dollar volatility. And of course, there could be that inflation scare. So that is on the assumption that this is 2 to 6 weeks. No? My scenario 2 is around roughly 30%, which is basically the prolonged conflict. And this could last between 3 to 9 months. So definitely, we're probably going to see more mitigating measures on the part of government to probably try to contain inflation. And probably we won't see the BSP probably cutting rates anytime soon. They'll most likely be watching inflation that it doesn't go beyond 3%. So these are, I think, the 2 highly probable situations. The others are basically more of a mixture of probably it will be prolonged, but it won't be as what we're seeing right now. And that's roughly 15%. Still, the impact is still very similar to scenario 2. I think what is my 5% is really more of seeing an immediate resolution. No? That's why it's 5%. So it is very similar to what we saw last year around June 12 to June 24, the U.S.-Iran 12-day war. So the market reacted, and suddenly, after 12 days, market reacted. The peso weakened by more than 2 pesos. And after that conflict ended, the ceasefire, everything went back to normal.
However,
So,
the conflict, Jonathan, is larger this time and covers other
Yes.
the Gulf states, for instance.
yeah, so I guess right now the question really is how fast the GCC basically will either band together and probably try to stop Iran, or how to address this conflict. But I think for us here, the key word really is fasten our seatbelts. So it's really trying to do a lot of ways to save on energy, make sure that the supply chains are well kept so that there'll be no issue of hoarding and all, so that we can keep prices at bay, so to speak.
With the recent poor performance of the economy in the third and fourth quarter of last year, we were expecting some recovery in the first quarter. And if oil prices stay elevated, of course, that's going to have a knock-on effect on other things. How much do you think this will affect our growth as well as the inflation in the coming month?
Well, I think February inflation was 2.4. Most likely, the initial effect could probably for March, probably between 2.8 to around, probably at most 3%. But I'm projecting March to be at around 2.8%. Then definitely that will be driven by oil. One thing that we need to consider, that a 1 peso depreciation has very little transmission on inflation. So for every 1 peso depreciation, it's like 0.04%. So very little impact of the peso depreciation to inflation. So it's really more of the impact of oil prices, and then of course the traditional commodities like rice. But I think so far, in terms of inflation, I think it can still be contained. You have to understand, we have a band of 2 to 4%. And I think that can still, the inflation expectations are still well anchored. So you have to remember that when we started the year, from a survival mode to probably more of normalizing spending on the part of consumers, no? But this time, with this situation where we're back to survival, so people will eventually need to anchor their inflation expectations. If we see lesser impact of this crisis, meaning we're seeing less of the war, then and hopefully in 2 to 6 weeks we get to see some more of resolution, then that's actually positive for everybody.
Well, of course, we're being optimistic that we're seeing, a resolution to the conflict at most in a month or two. But should this be prolonged, then we will be in serious trouble.
Yeah, definitely the recovery will take longer. In fact, I recall mentioning that my view for the growth for 2026 was 4.7%. So it's lower than what everybody or the consensus forecast of at least 5%, and probably inflation at around close to 3%. So these are basically more of anticipated in terms of a forecast, because it takes time for the government spending to normalize. So I'm most likely expecting that the impact of what the government have highlighted of over 1.4 trillion pesos in the big bold reforms we will feel those effects probably towards the end of the second quarter. So it will take time. So of course, if we add this situation, definitely it will there will be a slight drag.
As a macroeconomist, Jonas, what are your thoughts on the proposals to, one, remove the excise tax, or two, maybe remove the VAT on oil products?
Well, ideally, I think at this point in time, the government needs revenue. So suspending the excise tax, it's really more about doing mitigating measures. And one of them probably is a portion of the income generated could be given or a subsidy given to a selected sector. No, so these are not ayudas, but you're really giving them subsidy. So when they go to a certain gasoline station, they will be written, and then they'll probably be given a discount or a subsidy of 500. So the subsidies that the government should do is something that is credited to them. It's not money given to them, so that it will really be targeted to offset the impact of transport. Maybe a subsidy on electricity for some, which the government has already started. So it's just probably trying to work on those, and probably mitigating measures that could probably be temporary, meaning it's just good for maybe 1-2 months and then it stops. Because we will just assume and probably take it one step at a time, whether to do more. Mainly because it
Plus, the removal of
Yeah,
the
go ahead.
excise tax benefits only a small segment of the society who can afford.
Yeah. Correct. So I think it's really more working on those types of subsidies. Again, the 4-day work week will probably be more of temporary, but again, given the set of technologies, we can actually try to use this type of the digital space as an opportunity to take advantage of it, so that we become more productive. So rather than being in traffic, if you are able to work in a place near your work or near your home, then definitely it makes it more palatable, especially during this 1 to 2 months, assuming that we really see that this situation could probably be more of temporary. No? But again, if it one of the things that even recently BSP Governor Remolona said, I guess the key number that we're all waiting for is an oil price above 100. Then that's something that that already sends signals that we could probably breach the 3% in terms of inflation.
And should this tension be protracted, I'm taking, of course, the devil's advocate POV here. Should it be protracted? How much fiscal space do we have actually to play around with?
Well, basically, I think as long as we see you have to understand that the economy is still growing. It's just that it's not growing at a speed that we wanted, which is 5 to 6%. 4.4% is least ideal, but the economy is growing. So as long as we restore that growth closer to 5%, then definitely we still have space to move. I think what we need to be able to do is look at productive measures so that we're able to grow the economy. No? So again, one of the other things that we can do in the meantime is really work on trying to make sure that our food security is there, because that's another thing to consider. So if we look at productive measures so that instead of importing them, we're able to rely on our domestic, then that should be good. At the same time, work on factors to ensure that we have ample supply of gasoline, no? And power, especially during the summer season, so that there's no interruption in the potential recovery of the economy.
All right, we thank you so much for your insights. That was economist Jonathan Ravelas joining us.
And we are going to take a very quick break, but coming up, Vice President Sara Duterte's lawyer denies her hand in alleged death threats against safe-proclaimed former aide Ramil Madriaga. The details when the big story returns. Stay tuned.
Thank you for staying with us here on March 9. Here are the highlights of the President's message.
Naghahanda na po tayo. Una, nakikipag-ugnayan na tayo sa Kongreso upang mapagkalooban ang Pangulo ng pansamantalang kapangyarihan upang bawasan ang excise tax sa mga produktong petrolyo kung papalo ito sa $80 kada barrel. Ikalawa, kinakausap na natin ang Kongreso upang amyendahan ang Biofuels Act of 2006 upang magamit natin ang mas murang bioethanol para sa pagbababa ng presyo ng gasolina. Ikatlo, ilalabas natin sa lalong madaling panahon ang fuel subsidy at cash transfer para sa mga apektadong sektor. Para naman sa bahagi ng pamahalaan, simula sa Lunes, 9 ng Marso, pansamantala nating ipapatupad ang 4-day work week sa ilang tanggapan ng ehekutibo. Hindi kabilang dito ang mga nagbibigay ng emergency o pangunahing serbisyo gaya ng mga pulis, bumbero at mga tanggapan na nagbibigay ng frontline services sa publiko. Inaatasan ko ang lahat ng ahensya ng ating pamahalaan na magtipid at magbawas ng 10 hanggang 20% sa konsumo ng kuryente at gastos sa petrolyo. Pansamantala ring ipinagbabawal ang mga biyahe at aktibidad ng pamahalaan na hindi naman kinakailangan gaya ng mga study tour, team building activities o mga meeting na maaari namang gawing online. Nasimulan na po ang paglikas ng mga Pilipino na nais magpa-repatriate. At sa oras ligtas na ang pagbiyahe, mailikas na natin lahat. Mga kababayan, hindi natin alam kung kailan matatapos ang kaguluhan sa gitnang silangan. Biktima tayo ng isang giyera na hindi natin pinili o ninanais. Hindi natin kontrolado ang digmaan, pero kontrolado natin kung paano natin poprotektahan ang Pilipino. Hindi ito ang pinakamalalang pagtaas ng presyo ng langis na naranasan ng ating bansa. Marami na tayong napagdaanan na pagsubok. At sa bawat pagkakataon, dahil sa ating pagkakaisa, pananampalataya sa Diyos at malasakit sa isa't isa, nalampasan naman natin ang mga ito. Naniniwala ako na malalampasan din natin ang pagsubok na ito.
In other news, Vice President Sara Duterte's alleged former bagman, Ramil Madriaga, has asked the National Bureau of Investigation, or NBI, for help. And that is to probe supposed death threats that he has been receiving since he accused the VP of taking campaign money from pogo bosses and drug lords. On our sister program Storycon, attorney Raymond Balad claimed his client was recently threatened in jail. Madriaga is detained at the Metro Manila District Jail Annex 2 in Camp Bagong Diwa, Taguig over a kidnapping case. Palad added there is a 5 million peso bounty to kill Madriaga and that the detainee was bribed 500 million to 1 billion pesos to keep silent on Duterte.
Ano namin na mag-file ng appropriate motion sa court citing this incident. Nagbigay na rin po ng salaysay si Madriaga sa NBI. Dinidetalye niya kung ano talaga yung nangyari and we will use that in filing the appropriate motion po sa court na matransfer siya ng detention.
The Vice President's lawyer, Attorney Paulo Panelo, denied Duterte's hand in the alleged threats against Madriaga. In fact, Panelo said they want protection for Madriaga so he remains alive. Recall that on March 4, Duterte sued the detainee for perjury over his affidavit that is now a piece of evidence in her impeachment complaints. For House Justice Committee Chairwoman Jervil Luistro, complainants should remain vigilant, seek protection for Madriaga, and ensure that he does not recant his testimony against the Vice President.
I think the complainant should resort to the government agencies, the concerned government agencies, to make sure that Madriaga is protected not only against threat, but all possible influence to change his testimony, no? Sapagkat he is one of the most important witnesses of the complainant. But it is up to the complainant to do what is necessary.
Ramil Madriaga, again, is a key personality in the impeachment complaints against Vice President Sara Duterte. Let's talk about impeachment and other issues with political pundit Ronald Llamas. Good evening, Ronald.
Good evening, Ses and Sean.
Good evening.
Okay, let's check the week that was with you. Unang-una, well, I caught your interview with Sa Totoo Lang, and you did say that the opening of the bank account, supposed bank accounts of the VP will be the game changer in the impeachment process.
Yes. Kung maalala niyo, Sean, more than a week ago, sabi ng isa sa major parties sa House, yung NUP, hindi sila pipirma, hindi sila sasama sa impeachment ni Vice President Sara kung walang new evidence. And then, after a few days, nag-backpedal sila. Sabi nila ay individual conscience na nung mga members nila ang magpapasya. At nowadays, ay halos lahat ng NUP ay bumoboto na dito sa Justice Committee. 54-1 yung botohan. At maraming NUP na nandun. So, practically, yung mga nag-hesitate sa impeachment ay hindi na nag-hesitate. Ang alam nila, yung hinihingi nilang new evidence ay mukhang doon papunta itong impeachment. Ano ba yung new evidence na yan? Kumpara dun sa last impeachment a year ago, ang bagong evidence ay yung kay Madriaga at saka itong SALN. Itong SALN, pagkasama yan sa articles of impeachment, ibig sabihin, kasama dyan yung pagbubukas ng mga bank accounts ni Vice President Sara at ng kanyang immediate family. Ang nakukuha ko rin na information ay testify si former Senator Trillanes at si former Deputy Ombudsman Tarandang sa usapin nitong bank accounts. And most probably, baka mag-file sila ng appeal sa AMLA para gawing official yung pagbukas ng mga bank accounts. Kaya tingin ko ito yung mga new evidence na hinihingi ng NUP more than a week ago as the reason kung hindi sila susupport sa impeachment. At mukhang medyo satisfied naman sila dahil most of their members, if not all, sa Justice Committee ay bumoto na para aprubahan in both form and substance yung impeachment ni Sara.
Pero pag dumating, Ronald, no, sa punto, let's say, ma-impeach siya nung House, magta-trial sa Senado, of course, iba na yung makeup ng Senado ngayon, iba na rin yung Senate President natin. What do you think will happen there?
Well, the battleground, I think, would be the Senate. I think yung one-third sa House ay doable. Lalo na ngayon, 54 congressman na yung pumirma sa Justice Committee. Ibig sabihin, na lang yung kailangan pagbaba sa plenary para makuha yung at least one-third. Pero sa House, two-thirds. So, and the majority in the House ay 15 lang. At hindi lahat ng 15 na yon ay critical or naging critical kay Vice President Sara. No? Kaya kakailanganin ng hindi lamang ng ebidensya, kung hindi kinakailangan ng pressure from all sides. Kung gusto nilang mag-succeed yung yung conviction, yung trial sa Senate. Ang maganda lang dyan ay sabi ni Senate President Tito Soto, pag umakyat sa kanila yung impeachment, ay forthwith, immediately, ay i-constitute nila yung sarili nila as an impeachment court. No? Yun ang promise ni Senate President Soto. Ikalawa, kung mapapansin nyo, parang may binabackpedal yung Blue Ribbon dun sa mga senador na dapat sanang kasuhan. No? At least 3. So, ibig sabihin, something must be happening in the Senate. No? Something must be happening there in terms of negotiations. No? Wala naman akong naisip pahiwatig. Parang mysterious na after all the investigations, after all the state witness, biglang natahimik yung mga dapat kasuhan ng mga senador. No? Is this because impeachment na aakyat sa kanila eventually, no? Perhaps in the next 2 months.
Pero yung Queen's Gambit niya, no, or yung pag-a-announce niya na tatakbo siya sa 2028, I'm talking about VP Sara, of course, do you think waepek ito doon sa Kongreso? But do you think that will have more impact sa Senate? Since usually yung mga senador, yun yung mga, nag-aspire to higher office.
Well, sa Congress, meron namang epekto. Sabi ko nga nung previous interview ko rito, ay nagsesend na ng feelers yung Sara Camp sa mga congressman na all is forgiven, all is forgotten. Yung mga banat nyo sa akin sa Quadcom, yung pagpirma nyo doon sa previous impeachment, kakalimutan na yan. So long as hindi kayo pumirma sa impeachment ngayon. At kung sakaling pipirma kayo sa impeachment ngayon, there will be hell to pay. Sa 2028, pag ako na yung presidente. So yun na yung mga messages nung Sara Duterte camp sa mga congressman. Kaya sigurado ko, hindi sila makakakuha ng 260 votes na nakuha nila last year sa impeachment ni Sara. Pero 30% ay doable, achievable yon. No? Yun yung sinasabi ko. Kaya in a way, may epekto naman sa Congress. Sa Senate, depende yan dahil yung mga senador ay you have 24 separate republics. So they will be deciding based on their political calculation. Ngayon, ang kanilang benepisyo ba ay sa pag-convict kay Sara o pag-absuelto kay Sara? Alam mo, yung usapin ng minority-majority sa Senate sa simula ay hindi yan ganun kahalaga pag umandar na talaga yung impeachment. Halimbawa, kung totoo yung sinasabi ni Deputy Ombudsman Carandang, former Deputy Ombudsman Carandang, kung totoo yung sinasabi ni Senator Trillanes na hundreds of millions, even billions, yung pumasok sa bank account ni Sara, yung kanyang asawa at yung kanyang pamilya na nanggaling sa mga drug lords at pogo lords, sinong politiko ang hindi boboto to impeach her? Baka ma-link pa sila sa drugs at saka sa pogo. No? Kung sakali, yung sinasabi ni Trillanes at saka ni Carandang. So that's one element dito sa impeachment. Ikalawa, ay ano ba yung quid pro quo? Ano ba yung carrot and stick sa mga senators na pwedeng gamitin nung mga gustong mag-impeach kay Sara? No? Kaya, mga negotiations yan. Pasensya na, Ses at saka Sean. Very cynical kasi ang negotiations. Very ng quid pro quo ng carrot and stick. Pero in the real world, it happens. At alam nyo naman yon.
But biglang maabsuelto yung mga senador na supposedly involved dun sa flood control mess? Is that the price?
Wala akong sinasabing gano'n. Pero sabi nga nung bunso ko, pag galit sa akin yung bunso ko, sasabihin niya sa akin, talk to the hand. No?
Well, that's only the Senate Blue Ribbon Committee report, but the ombudsman is still there.
Yes. So that's at least 2 Damocles swords. No? Tapos meron ka pang ICC. 2 senador ang posibleng may international warrant sa ICC. That's another Damocles sword. So, if you were in their place, baka mag-hesitate ka. Kahit yung original position mo is not to convict Sara. Katulad nung last year, ilan ba yung senador na pumayag na itigil yung impeachment? 15? 17? So, at tingin ko by this time, yung ibang mga senador doon ay nagbabago ng posisyon or nag-hesitate.
But you can't, the government or the powers that be cannot dictate to the ICC kung may ma-release na arrest warrant, di ba?
Yes. Pero sino magsusurrender? Di ba yung government? Di ba? Upon the request of the Interpol. So, pwedeng pa yun. Pwedeng madribble, pwedeng madelay. Again, hindi ko sabi gagawin nila. Ha? Wala akong sinasabing gano'n, ha?
Won't it look bad though if kumbaga quote-unquote i-save nila yung 2 senador pero hindi nila nagawa yon para kay former President Rodrigo Duterte?
Of course. All of this, meron itong may pros and cons ito. Diba? They're balancing a lot of things eh. Yung mga tao magagalit kung walang makulong na mga big fish. Puro dilis lang yung nakukulong eh. Diba? Kaya meron niyang negative, positive. So, yung gobyerno, binabalanse yan. At this point, ano ba yung mas kailangan nila? Ano ba yung mas mahalaga sa kanila? No, walang pandyan eh. Walang clean na mga solusyon. No? Either way, it will have a negative effect. Siguro, ang kinakalculate nila, ano yung lesser evil? Ano yung lesser evil? No?
Pero
may at
Ronald,
this point.
Teka, iwanan na muna natin tong impeachment if we for the moment at puntahan natin itong anti-dynasty measure na talagang parang walang nangyayari sa House at nagiging mainit rin ang diskusyonan doon.
Well, una ay meron ding version ng Senate. So mag-uusap ang House at saka Senate para sa isang compromise. For now, parang para sa mga ibang mga nanonood, parang mas better yung version ng Senate. No? Kaya magkakaroon niya ng BICAM. Ikalawa, ang alam ko, even Malacanang is not happy with the House version ng anti-dynasty bill.
really?
Kaya pwedeng sa BICAM ay mag-play ng role yung isang dapat hindi nagpe-play ng role, yung Malacanang.
Wait, Ronald, balikan natin. Hindi masaya yung Malacanang sa version ng House sa political dynasty bill, but am I wrong in thinking ito yung version ni Speaker Bogie D at ni Majority Leader Sandro Marcos, presidential son?
Yes.
Please explain.
Kasi balat kayo lang itong measure na to eh, hindi ba?
Well, ang balita ko ay kasi yan priority bill ng presidente. Ba't kagagawa ng anti-dynasty priority bill na ini-institutionalize ang dynasties? Ang alam ko ay ang calculation dyan or ang tingin dyan ng Malacanang, I may be wrong, ay kasabog ito sa mukha ng presidente. Kung itong version na ito ang ma-approve, magagalit ang maraming mga forces. Halimbawa, civil society, Catholic Church, middle class, etc. Kaya ayaw ng Malacanang yung ganyang klaseng version.
Pero gusto naman nila ang Senate? Gusto ba nila yung Senate version?
Well, tingin ko, it's a better version than the House version. Not only for me, but for some of the decision makers.
Right, but kasi largely, Ronald, why I find this kind of surprising.
Yeah.
In recent times kasi, ang laki ng power or ng control, quote-unquote, ng Malacanang over Congress eh. Tapos anak pa niya yung majority leader, diba?
Well, Sean, pwede kasing graceful exit yan para sa mga congressmen. Dahil alam mo naman, ang daming dynasty sa Congress eh. So, it's a graceful exit na parang sasabihin nila, sasabihin ng speaker, sasabihin ng presidential son, wala na sa kamay namin yan dahil ito yung naging compromise. Inilaban namin yung version natin, pero para magkaroon ng anti-dynasty law, kinakailangan namin mag-compromise with the Senate and with other forces.
I guess
So, pwede yung mga dynasty na nasa Congress ay pwede nila ma-appease or at least hindi magalit sa kanila. Pinayagan namin yung gusto nyo, pero pagdating sa BICAM, hindi namin nakuha yung gusto nyo.
Yun ang way out nila.
Yes.
May re-recycle
Yes.
akong tanong. I remember earlier this week, I asked this to a congressman that we interviewed. Do you think, would you rather, in your opinion, Ronald, settle for a really watered down political dynasty bill, or mas okay ba na wag na lang muna natin ipasa until makapasa tayo ng maayos at may ipin na or anti-political dynasty bill?
Well, depende yan eh. Depende kung gaano ka-watered down. No? Halimbawa, yung SK kasi ngayon, meron na silang anti-dynasty bill, anti-dynasty law sa SK. No? Sangguniang kabataan, up to the second degree of consanguinity. Existing na yan, meron din yan sa BARM. Yung proposal ng halimbawa ng mga akbayan, Kabayan Black, etc., ay hanggang fourth degree ng consanguinity. So, in between that, yung second degree of consanguinity at saka yung fourth degree na proposal ng mga progressive congressman, I think they can have a compromise which is, yes, watered down, but acceptable to more sectors sa ating lipunan, more decision makers. Tingin ko that is feasible.
Okay, final
But then-
question. Sa game of chess na ito in this week, sino ang mas nakapuntos? Marcos or Duterte?
This week?
This week lang.
Yes. Well,
What?
Meron namang stalemate option, di ba?
Meron
Merong
sana tabla.
Wala. Ano?
Dahil, nasabihin ko sana tabla. Tayo.
Tabla lang.
so stalemate nga.
Pero,
Pero,
baka lamang ang Marcos dahil natapos na sa Justice Committee practically. No, natapos na. At parang ang nakikita ngayon ay matutuloy na yung impeachment sa House. Kaya medyo lamang sila. Ang sabi naman ngayon ng Kwan, ang sabi naman ngayon ng mga Duterte, bakit dyan yung focus nyo? Bakit hindi dun sa Marines? Yung 18 Marines na nagsabi na 805 billion yung dinala sa Malacanang. Pinadala ni Malacanang ni Saldico. Parang medyo natalo yung mga Duterte ron dahil sumabog yung yung narrative. Nag-backpedal si Baligod na sinama dati si Laila. Yung maleta naging supot na lang. Tapos yung dinama yung ICC, binawi na rin. Tapos yung 800 billion, parang mathematically improbable, no? Na magawa yan in 3 years. Ibig sabihin, wala na talagang projects. Lahat goes na. At
Do you think it's absolutely zero grain of truth in that? Or
Well, pa naman, halimbawa, Sean, yung testimony ni Saldico, very compelling naman yun. 150 billion yung sabi niya, di ba? Ang problema, gumuho nung sinabi niya na wala siyang nakuha ni a single centavo. So, medyo gumuho yung kanyang narrative. Dito rin, parang na-weekend eh. Kung nag-focus sila, ganito karami yung pinadala ni Saldico kay Marcos o sa Malacanang. Katulad ng testimony ni Saldico na 150 billion. Baka yun, medyo doable pa eh. Ibig sabihin, merong ghost project at merong mga projects na talagang binawasan yung delivery.
Okay,
Pero
so
pag sinabi mo 105 billion, no? Medyo hindi ganun kadali. No? Even the mathematics Panyan 85 metric tons. Yung 85. Assuming na 1 million.
alam ko na
is
kung
1 kilo.
sino din ang nakapuntos dito, si Yusek Clear. Anong sabi niya?
Oo,
lousy
parang
script. Hindi award-winning.
100 million a day. It will take you almost 6 years para mag-empake ng 805 billion. So, parang tapos binabackpedal pa ni Baligod yung kanyang storya. No? So, sabi nga nila dyan, kung one part ng iyong testimony ay humina o na-taint o kaya napatunayang mali, then yung buong testimony mo tatamaan.
Okay.
May kwan sila dyan, may Latin term, pero hindi ako magaling sa Latin kaya
Falsis in...
Sige, we'll see. We'll continue to keep score and we'll see you next week. Thank you for joining us on The Big Story once again. Ronald Llamas, political pundit. This is a big story on One News. Senator Jinggoy Estrada has gone viral and for all the wrong reasons after an uncomfortable Q&A with a female athlete. That and more when we come back. Stay tuned. The big story is back with more headlines this Friday. The Sandigan Bayan has set the 10-day bail hearings of former Senator Bong Revilla for April. This is in connection with his malversation case over the alleged 92.8 million peso ghost flood control project in Pandi, Bulacan. The anti-graft court will determine whether the evidence against Revilla and his 6 other co-accused are strong enough to grant them temporary liberty. The Sandigan Bayan will release the ruling by end April or early May.
Meantime, China has denied allegations that it has links with individuals involved in espionage and foreign-directed malign activities. Chinese embassy spokesperson Ji Lingpeng calls the Philippine National Security Council's report, quote, malicious smears against China. He calls it as another attempt to hype up the so-called China threat rhetoric. The NSC earlier reported that 3 former government officials were apprehended for allegedly spying for China. And in other news, Indonesia will restrict access to some social media platforms for children below 16 years old. The nation's digital ministry says it will deactivate accounts on TikTok, Facebook, Instagram, and Roblox. This move aims to reduce risks of cyber addiction and bullying. Several countries earlier announced the same policy, including Australia, Spain, and Malaysia.
And yet in other news, Quezon City Congressman Bong Suntay's wife has apologized to Ann Curtis. On Instagram, Sheila Guevara called out the way her husband spoke about the actress during a House Justice Committee hearing. Sheila said she stands with Ann and her family. Mrs. Suntay also denied the narrative. She laughed at the analogy made by her husband. She likewise appealed to the public to leave her and her children out of the issue. Congressman Suntay is now facing an ethics complaint at the House of Representatives over the now infamous comment.
And then there is Senator Jinggoy Estrada, who drew the ire of netizens for his comments directed at a female athlete.
Filipino boyfriend? No?
Not yet po.
Maybe Senator Pangilinan might want to apply. Ah, sorry to kay Sharon. Gagalit yung command.
That exchange happened on March 3 during the Senate Justice and Human Rights Committee hearing on the naturalization of Gilas player Elizabeth Mees. But the video went viral just today. Happy Women's Month.
Yeah,
I say that with
with sarcasm.
I
nako. What's with these men?
I don't know. I mean, that was so uncalled for. I have no words.
And also, you know, the reply of Senator Pangilinan could have been more. I mean, you should have
chastised Senator Jinggoy
yes,
instead of. Do you think maybe like us Pinoys, you know, we're always so jahe, diba, to be aggressive? Do you think we should change? Because parang culturally, it's like we default to laughter if we're awkward
And I
about
thought also the women there in the Justice Committee hearing could have, you know, nipped it in the bud.
Well, in fairness to Senator Bel Zamora,
Yes,
she was really,
yes.
and she also said, Hoy, National Women's Month and going to the UN.
Oh, at saka, pero si, the chairperson dapat, diba? Well, she was focused on,
She was focused on trying to be fair in mediating the whole thing.
yeah, but, you know, you have to react on the spot immediately so it doesn't deteriorate.
That's
or
true.
become bigger.
And also siguro, when you apologize without qualifiers. Para sincere. On that note, it is Friday. That is it for the big story this week. We'll see you again on Monday at 8 o'clock p.m.
Kapatid, we are One News, all sides, all the time. Good night and have a great weekend, everyone.